You're listening to I Love This TV Show, The Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls, Season 2, Episode 22, Diamond in the Rough. Original air date, March 21st, 1987. In this episode, Sophia is trying to negotiate with vendors for the banquet. Rose comes out of the kitchen, complaining that she is stuffed from trying food from 10 different caterers for the banquet, but none are right for the banquet. Blanche comes in and tells them where the banquet will be held. It's a very upscale place, and they freak out because it's well outside of their budget. She got the room at a discount. Rose says a caterer is dropping by this afternoon. Dorothy asks Blanche about a band. Blanche thought Rose was getting the band. Dorothy is worried. The doorbell rings, and it's the caterer. Blanche is attracted to the caterer, Jake. She asks him if he is married. All three of the girls are smitten. They finally ask about food. Before he leaves, Blanche makes a date with him. The three have a little dust-up because Blanche went after Jake so quickly without giving the other two a chance. He takes her to a restaurant that she is not impressed with. He flirts with her and she calms down. As they flirt, she discovers a tattoo of a nose on his arm. They toast and get ready to eat the clam chowder. He kisses her to warm up her lips first. Back at the house, Rose and Dorothy audition an accordion player. They are not impressed and try to cut him off. He describes his finale. Dorothy ushers him out. Rose starts to panic because they don't have a band. So they go to the kitchen for cheesecake. Sophia is getting water. She's dry from licking the envelopes and stamps. Blanche comes in the kitchen. Jake is late. Blanche is not happy. She brings up things that bother her. Sophia comes in and brings Jake with her, but he's filthy. He's fixed a lady's transmission on the side of the road. Rose starts to tell a story. Jake begs Blanche's forgiveness. He describes a picnic on the beach. She agrees and forgives him. It's another day, and Dorothy is worried about the invitations. A section of the alphabet have not responded. Sophia might have mailed her shoes instead. Rose tells them she's got a jazz band for the banquet. Rose and Dorothy argue about dates for the banquet. Blanche comes in upset because Jake is half an hour late. She has a different date for the banquet than Jake. Rose is upset at her, and so is Dorothy. The doorbell rings and it's Jake. He gives her a kiss. He asks to be alone with her. She thinks he wants to be with her, but no, he wants to ask her something. Dorothy drags her mother and Rose to the kitchen. She misunderstands and tells him their relationship can only go so far because they come from two different worlds. He's a bit shocked. What she said still answered his question, as he was going to ask her to marry him. Blanche is completely shocked. Dorothy finds Rose in the kitchen. She keeps having nightmares about the banquet. Sophia joins them. They start talking about sleeping to escape stressful situations. They start discussing Jake and how special he is and how dumb Blanche is. They tell her to call him. Blanche says their differences would eventually drive them apart. Sophia tells them that she was set up with Sal. She got stood on a rock, and that's how she got him. Rose says if she got a second chance, she'd want someone different than Charlie. Then Blanche asks Dorothy what kind of man she'd like the second time around. Blanche can't answer the question. Blanche then gives this big speech about her prince coming along one day. It's now the night of the banquet. Dorothy notices the all-female jazz band is actually men. Sophia comes over and talks about it loudly. The food is great. Jake is by the dessert table. He looks great. Blanche now wants to go after Jake and get him back. She goes to the dessert table to speak with Jake. She tells him she made a mistake. She was wrong. He tells her she was right, though. He's happy as he is. He kisses her lightly and tells her goodbye. She is shocked. That night, Blanche is on the couch crying. She admits she's not as young as she used to be, and suitors aren't lined up for her. Dorothy tries to comfort her with a pep talk. It works, and Blanche thanks her. Favorite quotes. Rose. I did learn that baked Alaska can actually be cooked locally. Dorothy. Rose. I have an even bigger scoop for you. Mars bars are made right here on Earth. Jake. I've been just about everywhere there is, and in all my years in the Navy, I've never met anyone like you. Blanche. Well, in all my years dating the Navy, I never met anybody like you. Rose. Blanche, sometimes you act just like a woman I knew in St. Olaf. Sophia. Please no one say what woman. Blanche. I'm just a stupid old fool sitting up all night with a broken heart. Blanche's new boyfriend is the diamond in the rough in this episode. He's a caterer, and he comes over because they're working on a banquet, and she gives him the contract because she's attracted to him. And it starts out a little strange anyway because all three of the ladies like him, but Blanche, of course, uses her charm to swoop in and steal him right out from under their feet. We actually get a look inside this relationship a little bit because normally we don't really see what a date looks like for Blanche. I mean, we know how all of her dates end, but we don't usually get to hear her talk all that much about a relationship. And in this episode, we actually hear her talk quite a bit because, well, she thinks he's nice and he's handsome. She has a lot of issues with this relationship. You know, she was raised as a Southern belle, and this is just like a really laid back, down to earth guy. He's not uptight, he's not pretentious, and she does tend to go more in that direction. And so, like their first date, the restaurant that they go to, she's completely shocked because it's the equivalent of a dive bar, in her opinion. And she doesn't know what to make of this because this isn't a fancy restaurant like she's used to being taken to. You know, he shows up late for their dates more often than not, which upsets her because she likes her guys to be punctual. You know, and then there's several times where he also shows up filthy. You know, he's always in jeans and whatever and very casual, and she's always dressed to the nines. And for her, it's just a very large gap in between. It's a juxtaposition that she just can't seem to come to terms with. And because of their differences, because of he's so laid back and she's like the opposite, because they are opposites in many, many ways. And she winds up ending the relationship with him because she just doesn't think that it's going to work. Now, the way she actually ends the relationship, oh gosh, that's just not so good either. Because he's actually about to propose to her. She thinks it's something else. And then what she says answers his question anyway. And to him, the differences didn't really matter. But to Blanche, those differences will matter forever. And then she has second thoughts after a couple of weeks, and she tries to get him back, but he turns her down because what caused her to be upset will continue. Because he's not going to change or become someone different, and she's not going to change and become someone different. You know, I mean, we do see in other episodes, we see many, many different guys that Blanche goes out with. And I actually didn't think that Jake was one of the worst ones. I thought he was one of the better ones, which is why I was kind of shocked with how she went down this whole path of our differences, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I have to wonder if maybe she did that because she was worried that it was almost too good to be true. You know, she had a relationship with George, her husband, who passed, and that's kind of her benchmark. And maybe, just maybe, that this relationship was coming a little too close to that benchmark with George. And she was kind of freaking out because she didn't want to get into a relationship again where she was going to lose them. You know, there is another episode somewhere in the show where I believe it's Dorothy points out that Blanche's relationships seem to have like a 6-week expiration date. And at the end of 6 weeks, she usually drops them like a hot potato, moves on to someone else, and there's another 6 weeks. And she does admit in that episode that she just doesn't want to be hurt again or feel the kind of pain she felt when she lost George. So that if she breaks up with them first, then she's not the one in any pain. And all I remember of that episode, and when I get to it again, it'll pop in my head, but I remember some guy had a heart attack, and his ex-girlfriend came to the hospital and Blanche didn't. And that's in a later season, but it goes to show that she's very skittish of the possibility of losing another person that she loves. Now, I'm not sure if any of the men she dates throughout the course of this show she actually falls in love with, but she's at least in like with them. And she goes on dates and has fun and whatnot, and it fills her time. But I do have to wonder if, relationships that expire after 6 weeks leave her feeling fulfilled, or at the end of them, she just winds up feeling as empty as she did when she lost George. Is it one of those situations where, oh, it's just a band-aid on the emotional wound, but the band-aid only holds for 6 weeks and then it doesn't help anymore, and that's why she throws them away?
Thanks for tuning in to the I Love This TV Show podcast. If you would like to make a donation in support of this podcast, you can through Cash App to Pasta